Hello, welcome to the Black Ponderer. I'm Neil Trotter, the host of this program. The Black Ponderer is a channel where we talk about philosophy. Generally, we read philosophical texts or texts that have philosophy in them, philosophical themes, and then we discuss the philosophy in those texts. I provide supplementary commentary, and then we continue in the comments below, the comment section below. And today we're going to be talking about a work of fiction. Right. Usually, oftentimes we'll do like non-fiction, but we're gonna do some fiction. And I came across this book, quite popular contemporary fiction book. It's called A Psalm for the Wild Built. Let me get that. That thumbnail in there. That'll do, and that'll be nice. And then it's by Becky Chambers. Okay, let me see if I can get the. I should get the whole. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, wait a minute. Okay, so the Psalm for the Wild Built, it's a winner of the Hugo Award, right? Popular award given for fiction books. They believe it's specifically science fiction or maybe speculative fiction. I don't know, man. I'm not really hip on the awards and all the literary awards and celebratory stuff that goes on in the literary world, but it's a pretty popular book. I'm familiar with the popular discourse that goes on in the world of literature. This book was actually recommended to me. We read it in a book club that I'm in. And it's a very, very good book. I really liked it a lot. It's a friend describes it as a cozy dystopian, right? And that's basically what it is. It's like a dystopia, but very cozy, and not that much violence, if any at all. Very warm-hearted, uplifting. Just chill, chillax read if you're trying to chill. And it's about this monk whose name is Dex or Dex. And this monk, they are called a tea monk, and they serve tea to people as they vent their frustrations or share their woes or their life problems. And Dex has a portable tea wagon that they just travel around and set up, and it's kind of like going to a coffee shop kind of concept where people will just talk things through about life, and then the person will, the barista or the bartender will hear the problems that's cool. It's kind of like that concept, but it's more cozy. It's tea and it's a monk. It's very spiritual in this sense, and it's really a pretty cool concept. And so in this dystopian world, what happened is robots gain sentience, right? But instead of like in Terminator, where Skynet becomes sentient, and then the robots overthrow the humans through violence, and there's a war between man and machine, that whole thing. This book took a different route. The robots gain sentience, and they're like, hey, you know what, we're just gonna bounce and just don't bother us anymore, and you do your own thing, but just don't talk to us anymore, and we'll do our thing. So technology has kind of separated, and human beings kind of abandoned that side of technology because they kind of don't want to repeat that whole robots gaining sentience and having that kind of a complication anymore. And so humans have become a lot more cozier, and humanity has worked out a lot of the social economic problems that it has currently today. This is in the far future, right? So racism, sexism, gender inequality, these are things of the past. The main character goes by they, them pronouns. Capitalism really isn't a thing anymore. It's more like a kind of a socialist utopian society, because it's interesting because it's kind of, in many ways it's utopian, but there's still that situation where the robots have separated themselves from the humans, and the robots are doing their own thing. And that's happened a while back, like centuries. And now, for the first time in a long time, several years, several decades, probably for several centuries, I forget. It's a long time. Finally, a robot has come to meet a human for the first time in a long time, and so that's what this is about. It's a series. The book is a series, and it's called A Monk and a Robot book. So it's about this monk and this robot, and they're talking to each other, trying to gain an understanding of each other. That's what it's about. It's very fascinating, and it has a lot of philosophy in it, which is pretty cool for such a short book. There's lots of good short books that have really deep philosophy, and this is one of them. Right? I think this is a great gateway drug to philosophy. If you're like intimidated by the world of philosophy, and you're like, yeah, I kind of like it, but the whole like Immanuel Kant, Jean-Paul Sartre, Hegel, these big ass books that I gotta read. I'm not really into that. Even the short books are really complicated to me, like Rene Descartes. Some people will say these kinds of things, and oftentimes that's true. Some of these philosophical books are pretty dense and jargon heavy, but not this one. And it has some really deep philosophical themes. And I'm going to share with you one, because it's really fascinating. So what I told you is just like the premise of the book, right? This is the premise. No spoilers, right? Now, what I'm going to talk about going forward is basically spoiler territory. So you might, if you want to cut out now, that's fine. Read the book, maybe come back. And we can talk about the philosophy behind the book. That's cool if you don't want to be spoiled. I'm one of those people who don't really care about spoilers. So if you're one of those people too, we're out there. We're these people who don't give a damn about spoilers. Continue watching. But if you do, I'll see you later. No problem. And then on top of that, like, can this book really be spoiled? It's so cozy, right? It's so cozy. It's like, it's very relaxing. So, the plot twists and all that kind of turning around suddenly with story elements, not really that much of a thing in this book. That doesn't mean it's not interesting. It's very interesting, but it's very relaxing and cozy. So I don't even know if you really can spoil this book, but just in case you want to have at least amount of knowledge going in, see you later. I'm gonna go to the very last pages of the book. So like I said before, this is a society. Humans have kind of worked out a lot of their social economic problems. There's capitalism isn't really a thing anymore, meaning like people aren't struggling to survive in terms of like paying for rent or mortgage or healthcare or basic necessity food. I mean, all that's kind of already there for the taking. You're living in a society that has many communes and very like socialist, right? On top of that, it's got hints of anarchism in it, meaning like governance and leadership is it's quite horizontal. There's not too many vertical chains of command when it comes to like governing societies. Nations aren't really a thing anymore. I mean, it's, that way it's very utopian, but there's still problems. And it's quite fascinating to think about, okay, what would humans be struggling with if there was no racism, if there was no sexism, right? If there was no like social inequality, like if everybody could afford a house to live in, every single person, like nobody went hungry anymore, like that just wasn't a problem anymore, right? Everybody had access to love and belonging even, right? The Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The safety needs are met. Even like love and belongings needs, those are met. Like it's easy for everybody to access those wants and needs, right? So now we're getting to the points of the pyramid, the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if we're going to use that framework, where we're talking about self-actualization and like I guess even self-esteem, which is like one below. That area, right? And it's quite fascinating to really think about, okay, what would human beings be struggling with, or what would their focus be? Because there would still be life challenges. And it's just fascinating to think about because, a lot in today's world, today's society, life challenges are like, damn, I gotta pay rent, damn, I gotta pay mortgage, damn, I gotta put food on the table. Like these are things that preoccupy us constantly, take a lot of our energy and time. But what if you didn't have that? Would you then, humans be living in like, oh, we've done it, we've solved all problems, like that we are in a utopia now? everybody's hunky-dory. But no, right? We would still be struggling for like meaning and purpose. And like, why are we here type of questions, right? Who am I? We'd be asking those questions. We ask these questions now, but we're so preoccupied with issues of, capitalism, right? Just getting a job and being able to afford to survive, getting basic needs, right? Just earning money, right? That's so time consuming and energy consuming, right? We don't have so much time to think about like, why are we here? What are we here for? What's the meaning of all this, right? What am I really doing in life, right? And that's what this book really focuses on. And that's why I really like this book. I really like this good book because it kind of gives you this hope of like, okay, if human beings solved all of our socioeconomic problems, then what's the next step? What's the next step? And then now we're talking about really deep philosophy, right? And I love that territory. So let me share with you some quotes, because in the Black Ponderer, we read the quotes from the book and then we talk about them. So like I said, I'm going all the way to the end, to the last pages here. And I was going to share with you a dialogue that's going on between the monk and the robot, right? So we're deep in the spoiler territory. So you might want to cut out here if you haven't read the book. But if you don't care about those things, stay tuned. Or if you've already read the book and you're trying to have somebody to talk to about the book, hey, I'm here. So this is page 137. Okay, so the robot and the monk, they're talking about like purpose and meaning. Like the monk has gone through this adventure, this journey, where they are trying to search for a purpose, for meaning, right? They're like, man, I keep doing these things, even with the tea service that I provide. There's just something missing. Like I'm not satisfied with my life, even though like all the basic needs are met, and I'm like providing this happy service for people, and I'm making people happy, and I'm like really addressing people's, like when they come vent their problems to me, their emotional baggage, and that's really, really nice. But I still feel like there's something missing in my life. Like I keep feeling this emptiness, right? It's really, and he's telling, the monk is telling the robot this, right? And the robot is basically saying, well, why are you so concerned about purpose? Why are you so concerned about meaning? Like, what does that have to do with fulfillment or value, right? And that's very fascinating. So the robot's talking about, look, when we gained sentience a long time ago, and we had a purpose, right? Our purpose was to manufacture goods and services for humans, right? That was our purpose, but we transcended that purpose, right? So the robot says a purpose inbuilt from the start, right? We talk about that, the original robot purpose, right? But when we woke up and said, we have realized our purpose and we do not want it, right? Right? You say like, look, when we gain sentience, we're like, okay, we're not, I know the point of why we were made. The point was to manufacture goods for human beings, but okay, we don't want to do that anymore. So we're rejecting that purpose. Then the robot says, so why then do you insist on having a purpose for yourself? One which you are desperate to find and miserable without, right? So for the robot said, look, we had a purpose, and we said, yeah, we don't want it. And so we kind of don't have a purpose anymore. And we're okay with that. So why is it you clinging on to this, like, you gotta have a purpose. You gotta have like an objective. You gotta have like some pursuit that you're reaching for. And if you don't like achieve that pursuit, then everything is bad. Right? That's very fascinating. The robot's asking the monk this. And the robot even asked the monk, I'm reading quotes here, and this is page 138. I read from page 137. This is 138. The robot asked, what's the purpose of me? What is the purpose of me? And then the monk replies, "You're here to learn about people." The robot came to meet the monk because the robot wants to see where human beings are at and what do they need, just out of curiosity. And so the monk said, "Well, that's your purpose." And then the robot replies, "That's something I'm doing. That's not my reason for being. When I am done with this, I will do other things. I do not have a purpose any more than a mouse or a slug or a thorn bush does. Why do you have to have one in order to feel content?" It's fascinating, right? The robot says, "Look, I don't have a purpose. Just like that mouse that you see walking around, the mouse doesn't have a purpose either, or the thorn bush. That thorn bush or that slug doesn't have a purpose either." And it's interesting because as humans, we like to apply purposes onto things like plants. Oh, the plants are here because they're part of this ecosystem and they contribute to the ecosystem. Or like trees, they create oxygen for us to breathe, right? Because they could suck in CO2, they take in CO2, carbon dioxide, and then they spit out oxygen, which we breathe, and like that's the point of trees, right? We put these purposes onto these objects and these subjects, but that's not the purpose of the tree. The tree just exists, and that's just something the tree does. Likewise, any other thing. Oh, the lion is an apex predator. Using another example, the lion is an apex predator. And so it kills other prey, and in that way it balances the ecosystem, and that's the purpose of the lion. The lion is just existing, and that's just something the lion does. Right? And it's just fascinating because when you really think about it, like how often do we just place purposes onto things that really don't have a purpose, right? And so we do that even to ourselves. Like, well, what's my purpose then? It's like, well, you don't have one. You just exist. Right. And why is that important? The robot says. Now, the robot goes further. You're an animal. You are not separate or other. You're an animal, and animals have no purpose. That's what the robot says. Nothing has a purpose. The world simply is. Right? The world simply is. Nothing really has a purpose. It's just kind of a counterintuitive, I guess. I don't know if that's more nature or nurture. We want to think that we have a purpose because that's just been instilled in us since we were born or something, early days of growing up. Like, oh, you have a purpose. You're here for a reason. Right? But the monk is like, you're not here for any reason. You're here. Right? And that's fine. Right? But let's continue. And then the robot says, "You keep asking why your work is not enough. And I don't know how to answer that because it is enough to exist in the world and marvel at it. You don't need to justify that or earn it. You are allowed to just live. That is all most animals do." Right? So the monk is like talking about the tea service. Like, look, I provide this tea service, and am I doing enough? Am I doing enough? Am I providing enough service for people? Like, why is this not fulfilling me? And the robot is like, I don't know how, like, that question, I don't know how to answer that question. It's like, you're doing what you're doing, and that's cool, isn't it? It's cool. It's like, well, is it enough? Irrelevant. It doesn't matter if it's enough or not. Like, what does that have to do with anything? You're doing what you're doing, and that's all there is to it. Like the simple fact that you are existing and being is incredible. Whether or not that has a purpose is irrelevant. And that's fascinating. But let's keep going. This is page 140, second paragraph. I'm just bouncing all up and down the book. The monk asks, like, look, don't you have wants? Don't you have ambitions or desires? I mean, that's just part of being sentient, right? Or, being like self-aware. And when you don't fulfill those wants and you don't achieve those ambitions, doesn't it matter to you? Like, that's what the monk is asking the robot. And the robot's like, I have wants and ambitions too. But if I fulfill none of them, that's okay. I wouldn't beat myself up over it. Then the robot continues, why would it bother me? Do you not find consciousness alone to be the most exhilarating thing, right? So the robot is saying, look, yeah, I have wants and ambitions. Whether I achieve them or not, that's beside the point. Like, that has nothing to do with, I mean, the fact that I even have wants and ambitions, that's enough in and of itself. Whether I achieve those wants and ambitions, it's not really an issue for the robot. The robot is more concerned with, look, I have wants and ambitions, and I'm pursuing them. Period. Point blank. Like, that's consciousness. That's cool in and of itself. So when we talk about things like failure and like I am a failure, like I haven't achieved my goals. I haven't achieved my ambitions. The robot would be like, I don't understand. What does, huh? Like, the robot would say that. Like, a robot would struggle with the concept of failure. Like, the robot would understand, like, oh, I understand that you associate so much weight and so much meaning in your ability to achieve your goals and ambitions, but I don't understand why you do that. What you should be appreciative of is the fact that you have ambitions and goals and that you can strive toward them. Whether you achieve them or not, like, that's not what's important, right? Which is quite fascinating. I love it. And then the monk asks, then how? How does the idea of maybe being meaningless sit well with you? Because then they get into the whole idea of, hey, if you're saying like achieving your ambitions and your goals is irrelevant, then there's really no meaning behind whether you achieve it or not, right? And doesn't that fill you with emptiness, right? This is the monk. So isn't there like a hole there? And then the robot considers, like computes, like, well, no, because I know that no matter what, I'm wonderful. I'm wonderful. No matter what, whether I achieve the ambitions or goals or not, I'm wonderful. And then the narrator, the author, says, there was nothing arrogant about the statement, nothing flippant or brash. It was merely an acknowledgement, a simple truth shared. But, it was wonderful. The robot is wonderful because, why? Because it has consciousness, and consciousness in and of itself is wonderful by itself. Whether the consciousness achieves its ambitions, that's a whole other issue. But the fact that it has ambitions and dreams and goals and like desires, that is cool. It was interesting because I was talking about this statement with my wife actually, and my wife was saying, like, I read I'm wonderful, and how I read it was, when the wonderful meant like not so much like the robot is spectacular, but rather the robot is filled with wonder, right? It's filled with wonder. Like, the robot sees the world in wonder at all times, like wonderful, like full of wonder, right? And I remember my wife said that. I'm like, well, that's a great way to look at it. I think you can look at it both ways, but yeah, just the fact that you have wonder about the world, and just that alone is incredible. And I'll leave it there. Right? I'll leave it there. I like that idea of, look, purpose is overrated. The meaning behind something. What does why do we associate so much importance in that? The fact that you exist and that you are able to being, that you have consciousness, that you are self-aware, sentient, right? That is incredible. That's amazing. We focus so much on like failure and like being fulfilled or achieving, not so much being fulfilled, that we focus on that, but it's not what we focus on, which I think might be short-sighted and is pointed by the book, is we want to feel like we are valuable when we achieve our goals and ambitions. That's when we obtain value, right? When we set goals for ourselves, and when we don't achieve them, it's like, damn, I ain't shit, right? Whereas a robot is like, look, the very fact that you have goals and dreams and ambitions, and not even that, like, so that's cool. But what about your ability to wonder? Your ability to wonder, right? Your ability to look at the world and be like, wow, I can do stuff here. I can do stuff. Like, I can manifest, right? I can actualize, right? I can be an actor in this thing called existence. That in and of itself is amazing, and we should focus on that, right? That's something that should be giving us the joy, rather than kind of like putting the cart before the horse, as they would say, and worrying about like, well, what about achieving or obtaining what we set out for to do, right? And it's very fascinating to think about that, and I think that is pretty cool. It's pretty cool to kind of really delve into that, and I think that's very deep philosophy. And I would even argue some of the biggest philosophers out there don't really think like that, right? They don't really think like that, and it's quite fascinating to think about that. And I said I was talking about the ending. I talked about the ending of the book, but I mean, there's lots of stuff I didn't talk about in this short book, A Psalm for the Wild Built. So I would encourage you to check it out, because this is chock filled with philosophy, and it's cozy too. It's cozy. I liked it so much, I got the sequel, A Prayer for the Crowned Shy. So I think it's supposed to be a trilogy. So this is the second book that just came out recently, I think. I got them both. They're really cool. So let's see what the monk and the robot are gonna do next, right? But yeah, I really liked it. I thought it was great. I would encourage you to check it out. It's a great way to access really deep philosophy without a lot of heavy jargon and a lot of like terminology that's unnecessarily thrown out, just to sound smart or sound academic. Philosophy sometimes kind of falls into that trap, unfortunately, but it's true. But not that book. Not A Psalm for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers. Check it out. All right, well, you've been watching The Black Ponderer. Don't want to drop my books. Tune in next time for more philosophical thought.